What's up, everybody? Welcome to another installment of That Science and Nature Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Howard, and joining me this week, we have Sebastian Forward.
Hello, everyone.
And Becky and O'Neill.
How's it going?
So this week, we're going to talk about the WHO declaring an end to the global COVID-19 public health emergency. We're going to talk about fish and the gruesome deaths through volcanoes. Sebastian is a big fan of that article, I'll tell you right now. And we're going to talk about an Italian town that has a fancy snake ritual. But first, we are coming to a close on the spring semester. This is going to be our last show for spring 2023 at UMSL. We will be back live in the fall. However, we do have summer plans, so you can follow us on the Facebook page at That Science and Nature Show, and we will give you updates about what we're doing this summer. We're planning to have a couple of shows smattered throughout June, July, August, not every week, but every couple weeks or so. And those will be podcast only, so we'll upload those to the Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music like we have been for this past semester's episodes. I'll recap that at the end. But I just want to let you know it's been a fun journey for the spring. We'll be back in the fall, but
Yeehaw.
and I have very exciting news to tell you both about recording the show over the summer, which I will tell you off air. But it'll be good.
Alrighty.
Okay. So first article up this week is all about the WHO declaring the end to the COVID-19 public health emergency. This comes to us from Science News. And pretty much the title more or less says it all. As of May, what was announced on May 5th, as of May 8th, I believe, they are basically saying the COVID-19 pandemic is no longer a public health emergency. It is still classified as a pandemic because it is still impacting the world, as pandemics do. But in terms of being treated with the same level of urgency and the same public health, I guess, tactics, it's going to change a little bit.
It is a welcome thing to hear indeed. Someone needs to just say it's over. I needed to hear them say it. I don't really care what it means, but I'm glad to hear that it's over, and I'm glad somebody put a definitive time on when we can say, the public health emergency is over at least. I don't think the pandemic itself is ever going to be over, because that's not how viruses work, but
yeah,
nonetheless.
There's literally a sentence in the article that says, while the pandemic is not over, those trends signal that it is time to transition to more long-term prevention and control of the disease.
Yeah, I felt a little more cynical about it. Like, okay, that changes my day-to-day absolutely zero.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when once again, it's not terribly impactful, but when you think about the fact that, the 1918, Spanish flu pandemic is technically still going on because we still have the flu, circulating. It's pandemics end when their public emergency ends, I would say, not necessarily when the virus goes away, because viruses, never fully go away, with very small exception.
You made me think of what would it be like if we had WHO back in the day for old-timey pandemics, sending letters.
That is true. There were mask mandates 100 years ago during the Spanish flu outbreak, and there were public health public health measures, and I am sure anti-mask people as well. These things just so happen to repeat themselves through time.
I'm just imagining a literal PSA coming in my mailbox being unfold, the pandemic is over.
Yes.
I was thinking even further back, ship sails to the New World, smallpox outbreak, emergency. They're more likely to spread the disease than actually help anything.
Yeah. Yeah. It would be harder to quarantine back in those days. Though quarantines themselves are very old as a concept.
Yeah, it seems like back then people would have just hauled you off and locked you up. There wouldn't have been a choice.
Given it may have been quarantining you from the evil spirits that are causing the disease, but quarantine is quarantine, I'd say.
Yeah, I suppose. Some interesting statistics they report in the article. Worldwide, more than 70 million confirmed cases of COVID-19 have been reported to the WHO as of May 3rd this year. I know it's a few days after that, but yeah, it's a lot of COVID. Nearly 7 million people have died from the disease, including more than 1.1 million in the United States alone.
Yep. This has been the modern era of our history. This is the current historical event that we've just lived through ended this week.
Yeah, ended
Technically.
in quotes. Also, more than 13 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines have been administered worldwide.
Yay!
So some people got their second shot. I'm glad to hear that.
Yes, no, that is true.
Oh gosh, I'm on my third or fourth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it's disproportionate. I'm sure it's not like most people got their second shot 'cause I'm sure a lot number of people who got no shots and probably got 4 or 5 shots,
Yeah.
like my parents.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Or people who still just are in places where they can't get any.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah, it does mention one of the challenges moving forward as they transition sort of away from the public health emergency is that getting vaccinations to at-risk communities who still don't have access is going to be a big challenge overall. But I don't think it's a COVID-specific problem per se.
Yeah, that's true. I remember the whole pandemic situation in China was still pretty ugly, like not that long ago. So it may definitely be that the pandemic is over in our part of the world, but not necessarily everywhere.
All right. Interesting first article to start off with. Just a nice little time, I guess, closing the book on COVID. Like, it sounds weird to say that because I know people will still get COVID, but like in terms
I
of...
need closure, okay? This is good. I welcome this.
Well, hopefully nothing in our lifetime will surge back up again. I was talking to Andrea about this like weeks ago. I'm like, is there going to be another pandemic in our lifetime? And
Better wait another 100 years.
And I was like, oh, maybe it'd be nice if it could happen like many, many years from now when I'm older. And then I thought about it. I was like, no, wait, because then I'll be older and I'll be more immunocompromised. It'll actually be worse.
I suspect that we've reached some sort of population density like break point, right? Where these are probably going to be more common just because of how frequently we're interfacing with reservoirs for new diseases. And then on top of that, just how many of us are living really close together. So I'm thinking this isn't the last one we're going to see. Just hopefully it's not a disease that is super virulent.
I mean, good.
I think one thing that kind of surprised me about COVID is really just the fact that it's taken 100 years to have another real pandemic. Like in biology, disease is kind of like the final check and balance against population growth. Like, you know, in nature, everything once its population gets out of hand almost always gets some kind of disease that brings the population down, and we've kind of been operating in absence of that. I think we've really effectively treated so many diseases that I don't know how we've managed to go so long without another pandemic, you know, for a whole century.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of them are probably considerably more mild than COVID. Like I'm thinking about, and this might be an extension of the flu you were talking about. Like, do you remember swine flu? I don't remember its actual name.
Swine flu. Was it MRSA? MRSA?
No,
That's a different one.
Okay.
Yeah. This was like, oh gosh.
Oh, MRSA was like staph, right?
Yeah, that's like
Yeah.
an antibiotic
Okay.
resistant pathogen that shows up in hospitals. But swine flu, was that like 10 years ago maybe?
I think so, yeah.
I was still in high school when swine flu was a thing, so.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
I was in my master's degree.
But it was like senior year of high school, so it was like the end.
But they stopped testing people because everybody had it, and everyone felt really bad, but it just wasn't quite as nasty as COVID, I think, in terms of like complications. It was still bad. But I think there's probably lots of diseases like that.
I think also, you know, if you look at the virulence factor or how effectively it spreads, COVID-19 is pretty much the most contagious disease like ever known. Like I believe it passed what is it? Measles. It surpassed measles in the later Omicron variants. So, you know, COVID-19 is the most spreadable disease we have ever found, and you know that's why most of the world got it at this point, I think.
All right, well, here's to hopefully not having a
Yes.
pandemic ever again, but realistically, it probably might. I mean, I'm sure we'll hear about stuff like, you know, Ebola and staph outbreaks of those ilk, but I would hope we never have to see an outbreak pandemic like we experienced.
The most horrifying thing to me is something like Ebola, a hemorrhagic disease that spreads like COVID spread.
Mm-hmm.
That would keep me up at night.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a direct trade-off between like dangerousness and ability to spread, because if you make people too sick too fast, they can't spread the disease. So that's one of the reasons why COVID was so bad, is because it takes a while to make you really sick so that you can spread it. So, little virology 101, but we can move on.
Speaking of things that keep you up at night, our second article this week comes to us from Smithsonian Magazine, which is actually a reprint, because they mentioned their byline that this article originally came from Hakai Magazine, so I guess they're kind of reiterating it because it's a cool story. And it is all about the gruesome ways that volcanoes can kill fish. So you probably, if you've listened to the show for a little bit, you've heard about us talk about sea garbage and space junk and other random things that can kill animals, but you probably didn't think something natural like a volcano would impact something like a fish. Apparently they do. When volcanoes erupt, and they are quite violent, I wouldn't say aftermath, the collateral damage, I guess, would be the best way to describe it from the volcanoes. The ash, the lava
Natural
pour.
disaster.
Yeah, the natural disaster can kill fish in some pretty gruesome ways. Particularly when it comes in the water, it can deprive a lot of the oxygen and make it very acidic, and the fish can respond physiologically in some not so fun ways, like their stomachs coming out of their mouths and their eyes popping out of their heads.
I hold it personal that you made us read this article about just like awful ways fish die. Why? Why did you choose this article?
Oh, am I supposed to rebuttal? You're looking at me like I need to rebuttal.
Defend yourself.
I don't know. Frankly, I was always kind of interested about this because I've seen a lot of like natural history documentaries where the fish, there's like an active volcano right nearby and all the sea life is still right there. I'm like, surely they're getting hit by lava flows or big lava rocks or like Jeremy was saying with chemical changes in the water. And yeah, I guess they do.
Yeah. When a volcano erupts underwater and just boils the entire lake, then anything hanging out in that water gets cooked by the earth, which is a terrible way to go, by the way.
Well, it's kind of funny because if you think about volcanoes, especially in the ocean, they're usually forming new island chains. So, and if you think about something like the Galapagos or Hawaii, they're out in the middle of nowhere, so they're kind of attracting certain kinds of island, coastal, adapted marine life at the same time that they're murdering them.
Yeah, you definitely do end up with apocalyptic events on your little island when the island erupts and then just sterilizes the entire, surface of said island.
But it's not so common that the fish avoid the area.
Yeah. Apparently they try and swim away, but when it's a volcano erupting, it's a little hard to get away from, so.
Yeah, and if they go too fast, apparently they get, like, the fish bends.
Yes.
What is the bends?
The bends is a phenomenon where you have gases dissolved in your blood when you go under pressure, and if you go up in the water too quickly, the gases in your blood will, like, come out, and you'll form nitrogen bubbles in your blood, which can kill you. So don't do that.
Or if you're a fish, in your eyeballs.
Yeah. Volcanoes are really bad to be around as, like, a living organism, just in general.
Just say, like, those volcanoes, they're so terrible. Why do we have them?
Very bad for all forms of life in general when you're close to the volcano. There's a lot of bad things that a volcano can do to you physically.
Yeah, this article was a reminder of just how violent nature can be, and we don't typically think of nature being violent without us being there, because we, as humans, do so many awful things to nature, like pollution and, urbanization and just getting rid of all the animals through overhunting and overfishing. But yeah, no, nature can be violent in and of itself without any of our help.
Yeah. How uplifting.
What's that quote that the professor says in Futurama? Nature is horrible and teaches us nothing.
It's been a while since I've seen Futurama. That sounds vaguely familiar. But as grotesque as it sounds, there are people who study this. I mean, I think it's kind of cool. Like, you have I don't remember the word. I don't think they actually define what the volcano biology or volcano studier is called. Is there actually a word for a volcano biologist?
A volcanology.
Well, that's
Not a biologist. It wouldn't be biology.
yeah, that's a type of geologist.
Okay.
I feel like a volcanologist could study the effects of volcanoes on fish, but I mean that's fair.
Biovolcanology?
Yeah.
Would that work?
Volcanobiologist?
It's literally just volcanologist is.
Well, yeah.
A volcano scientist.
We're making new words here.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
according to Google, that's what it is. But I mean, still kind of a cool thing. It kind of combines geology with the biology aspect. I mean, that's kind of an interesting job if you really just research. Like they talk about in the article, we're just gonna collect dead fish that come out of volcano aftermaths and study them.
Well, it's interesting to me in terms of behavioral ecology, right? Because if the volcano is killing a bunch of fish, and let's say 5% of the fish are like, it's shaking around here, maybe, or it's a little too warm, maybe I should get out of here, then those are the fish that live and reproduce. So how long do you need before, and how frequently are these events before you get like volcano avoidant fish?
That's the frequency interval is the problem here. That's why I've been saving this one argument we had in one of our classes about do earthquakes cause like evolutionary selection. I've just had this argument on the back burner for like 3 months now because we didn't get to actually finish this discussion in class because my position is if the thing that kills all the fish only happens every like 200 years, then you're like the fish are going to return to normal before the next thing happens. So it's not going to, affect the genetics of the population.
Unless it caused a severe enough bottleneck.
What's a bottleneck?
So a bottleneck is going to be if you have a population of 100 fish of some species and the volcano erupts and kills all but 5 of them. That's a really tiny gene pool. So we say that pool has gone through a bottleneck, even if all those fish survive and go on to have lots of grandbabies, and eventually we get a big population of 1,000 fish.
So
That's
basically,
fair.
there needs to be more earthquakes, is what you're saying.
I take no position on the goodness or badness of natural disasters. This is nature.
Fair.
Okay. All right, interesting phenomenon. Our last article comes to us from Atlas Obscura, which is a great site, and they always have fun, quirky things. And this one's a little bit more uplifting, not as vile, I guess, as volcanoes and dead fish.
Uplifting in like the pun sense.
Yes.
I mean, it's spiritual and festive. Is
But probably bad for these poor snakes.
maybe, but
Care
the
to
article.
introduce it?
Do you want to introduce it?
No, you go for it.
Okay. All right. So from Atlas Obscura, this last article is called "The Italian Town That Welcomes Spring with Live Snakes." So basically, this town in Italy, and I'm like, it's I'm gonna botch these pronunciations. Cociullo. They have a festival at the beginning of May every year, celebrating Saint San Domenico Abate. I think is how you say it. And what they do basically is people in the town's only like 200 people, they go to the mountains and they get a bunch of non-venomous snakes and they bring them down to the town and they kind of not rear them because they're already grown, but they like kind of house them in boxes for like a month until the ceremony starts.
Pamper them with mice and eggs.
Yes, pamper them as much as you can pamper a snake. And then when the festival actually starts, they basically bring the snakes out and drape them over the statue of Saint Domenico Abate. And basically the way the ceremony works is that if the snakes crawl over the statue's head and face, it is a sign of a good omen, good luck, and prosperity for the following year. If the snakes crawl in the arms or fall off the statue, that is considered bad luck or a bad omen for the upcoming year until the next festival. So kind of a interesting biology meets culture aspect, which I thought was really fascinating and cool.
Some very confused snakes. From the perspective of the snake, this would be a very strange event to be subjected to. But I think it's a very fun way to have people interact with snakes in a non-violent and not menacing way, which is hard.
I'll be the wet blanket.
All
I
right.
think they should leave the
Here we
snakes
go.
alone. Reason being, apparently a lot of these snakes are threatened or endangered. So apparently they used to eat them. They don't eat them anymore.
They do release them now.
Yes. It
That
says,
is good.
It says release them in the woods. But we know that cold releases like that, if you are releasing an animal not where you found it, you're going to have higher rates of mortality. In addition, I'm a little worried about the mice and eggs in boxes, because if snakes eat like that, they really need to be able to thermoregulate. If they're just in a wood box, they can't thermoregulate properly to digest. So I'm a little concerned about the long-term ramifications on these poor snakes. So that's my wet blanket approach.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I guess I'm just glad that they're not murdering all the snakes, which is like something that does happen in plenty of other cultures, including ours.
Well, could we do it like Groundhog Day? Could it be like one snake?
I like that. I like the snake necklace event concept as a whole. Just maybe limit the bulk of snakes that you have to pile on this ancient statue.
It's also worth noting this fellow was the patron saint of bites and recovering from bites, and then there was something else. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, I didn't really look up much about the actual saint himself.
It was like bites, rabies, and the article listed one other thing that he did.
Okay.
Interesting. I like how this involves a peaceful interaction with an organism that is considered like kind of evil in the Christian mythology, just kind of like going all the way back. Snakes do not have a very good reputation in the lore, so I like that. I like that this is peacefully interacting with them, even if it is probably very confusing and disruptive to these snakes. I guess maybe on a day-to-day level. Yeah,
from the photos, they're not shying away from them. They're like trying to touch the statue with the snakes and everything, which, like Sebastian said, I think from that point of view, it is a good exposure to snakes. I think any instance we have where we connect people to wildlife and make them less fearful of it in a respectful way, not in the way like we go to the safari and someone throws a rock at a rhino kind of way. That's not what I mean.
This statue, by the way, is like decked out like Mardi Gras with snakes. Like he's got like 15 snakes draped around the head of the statue, and it looks like people all around the area also just wear snakes as a casual celebratory garment for this day. And
yeah, so 200 people live in the town, but every year they have 10,000 people show up for this festival and ceremony, which I think is pretty cool. This, honestly, if I had like unlimited time and money, is one of those weird, quirky, like small town things I would like to just go visit to experience.
Yeah, this would be cool to at least go and see.
Yeah, this reminds me of, I'm just going to go on a tangent, but I took a pollination seminar. So pollination is the biology of bees transferring pollen from flower to flower for reproduction. But what we did for the last week of class is we all looked up a city and looked at like each city's like pollination initiatives. And I found this really small town in Texas called Beeville, not named after bees at all. It's named after a senator who had, I think his name was Bee something, from like the 1800s. Anyway,
Beeville is not named after bees. Oh, noted. All right.
I mean, as you could think in a pollination seminar, most people would probably be like, Beeville, oh yeah, it's bees. But no, named after a senator. And what they do every June for their like pollination week, which is like a big sort of pollination awareness type initiative around the United States, is they basically have this giant like festival for a week, and they're a small town, so they have like vendors and like they bring bees, like honeybees and bumblebees and stuff for people to get exposed to, and it's like a kind of a very like uplifting rural small town thing to do, which is cool because when I was doing my research for it, the town is mostly known for being near 3 like high security prisons. Like that's kind of their like claim to fame. So this is kind of like an uplifting small thing they do in June, which I thought was really cool. But this is getting to the point of I like these small town traditions of connecting people to nature.
Yeah,
is where I was going with that.
Yeah, I think if every kid that grows up in that town is like understands that you can pick up non-venomous snakes and like you don't have to kill them and you can, I guess, move them around respectfully. Like I think that's a good takeaway if people learn that from this activity.
I'm really just not sure they will. Putting them in a box for a month and then I think let's keep a few snakes. I've moved on from one snake that are just always kept at the church. They get all the mice and boiled eggs they want, and they come out every year. And if people want to touch them and interact with them, great. But
you just have like a set of snakes, like the ceremony snakes.
Like,
okay.
Designated celebratory snakes.
Yeah, like Puscatawny Phil, even though that's been
Yeah.
multiple groundhogs in more years.
It's not the same.
Where do they get the groundhog? Does somebody have to go out and catch Puxatawny Phil every couple of years?
My guess is there's groundhogs that end up in wildlife sanctuaries and they just replace. But that's a guess. But yeah, I'm a little concerned that the folks here, they're using the snakes to get good luck and blessings, right? That's not reverence for the snake.
That's true. That is true. And I'm sure the snakes don't appreciate this whole process. They might appreciate the mice and eggs. I can't ask them, but yeah, the whole celebration is probably not too terribly fun for the snakes.
All right. Well, we will be right back after this to talk about topic of the show. Stay tuned. And we're back. So, for topic of the show this week, it is the final week of the semester, also known as finals week if you've been to college anywhere before. And summer is technically next week. Not officially, but in terms of if you're a student in college, it is summer break.
The end is near!
Yes. As such, it has gotten warmer. It's late spring now. Summer is right around the corner, the official summer. And I just kind of, for this last show for the semester, wanted to have a lighter, easier topic. We've talked about a lot of heavier subject material. We also talked about a lot of fun things like The Last of Us and Marshmallow Madness. So I'm not going to sound like it's all like doom and gloom or heavy-handed topics. But for this week, I just want to talk about us connecting with nature. Summer's coming out. There's lots of things to do and see, and how we connect with nature and what we do for our personal selves, not our research selves, because obviously we're all biology people, so we go outside a lot to study biology. But how we connect, why it's important to connect with nature, ideas for people to connect. This is a much more open-ended topic this week. I don't have as much guidance for this, but we'll just start simply is how do you all connect with nature in any way, shape, or form?
Science, gardening,
Science.
keeping pets.
Okay.
Yes. I will say the best way to start understanding, for me as a botanist, is gardening. It's the most ethically solid way of keeping living creatures in your house with you, is get some house plants, because you can learn. You can learn how to take care of a houseplant by going through a couple houseplants and learning how to keep it alive. It's much better than, like, hamsters or other things that are, I guess, more bad if you forget to water them for a week or two. But
What do you guys garden?
I've kind of transformed part of my backyard, which was just dirt and like leaves and whatnot, and I built some raised beds with logs from a tree that fell down. Basically, just got some free dirt from the city and have been planting flowers and whatnot.
Okay.
Yeah, my garden's a pollinator garden out on the front of my house, and I like the native plant thing. I'm not saying that everyone always has to plant native plants. This is not judgy. This is just what I do.
Put some cactus in my yard.
Oh, there's cactuses that are native.
Oh, are there? I don't have a yard. I'm in an apartment, but I'm just making a joke. But good to know.
So in the summer, I really dig going to plant swaps. It's usually a bunch of people that do native plant gardening, and there's plant swaps for non-native plants. But for native plants, everyone digs up a little extra what they got, brings it to somebody's house, and if you don't even have any plants, you should still go because there's always extra, and it's great. And yeah, you get new plants. So it was wonderful.
So is that event free to go to?
Yeah, if you're in the St. Louis area, look up Native Plant Swap on Facebook, and you will find events near you. There's usually some in the spring. By end of May, we'll be towards the end of plant swap season, but then there's more again in the fall. So there's 2 times per year. It's usually prime planting seasons.
Okay. Interesting.
I found there's this one particular show called Gardener's World, which is a British gardening show that is currently in its like 53rd year or whatever. Like they've been making this show since like TVs were a common thing. Like this is a very long running show.
So like with I Love Lucy and those shows from the 50s?
Does this have a British guy, Monty? I don't remember.
That is Monty Don.
I love Monty.
The legend himself. And you're like, I swear, this show is just therapeutic. Like, even if you have nothing to do with plants, find like Gardener's World and watch it, and then you will want to. You will want to garden, and you will learn things that will help you start to garden, even if you're totally unfamiliar.
Sometimes I hope that Monty would be happy with my garden.
Yes, and he absolutely would be. Monty Don would be proud of us all.
How do I connect with nature? Let's see. I think I just like going on hiking and walking and just kind of experiencing the outside. I don't really got into gardening. Like, I have nothing against gardening. I don't know, maybe I don't have the patience for it, or, I mean, I probably do now. I'm a little older and less impatient, but yeah, I just like kind of going outside and going to places to see things. And so that's more maybe travel bug than it is per se nature, but a lot of those things I want to go see are in nature. I was surprised, Becky, that you said science connects you to nature, because that would have been on the bottom of my list. Weirdly, science is like a very systematic thing we have to do to figure more out about nature, but I wouldn't say I connect with nature by science.
Yeah, so I spend a fair bit of extra time when I can doing citizen science. I did Shutterbee, which is a pollinator documentation citizen science thing. I've done Project Feeder Watch with Cornell Lab of Ornithology, looking at my bird feeders. And a few other like science volunteer things. Like, I've helped do let counts and tagging with sharp-tailed grouse and just all kinds of fun stuff. I've even volunteered at hunter check stations and dug out lymph nodes to check for chronic wasting disease. Like, for me, I will just go do that stuff.
Okay. Now that you say all that out, describing it in terms of citizen science, that does sound more interesting. I was just assuming, like, we're going to go write a professional science paper. That's how I connect with nature. Yay.
No, I want to get, like, hands-on.
Okay, that makes more sense.
And this weekend, I signed up. Go to Missouri Department of Conservation website if you're interested for a night hike to listen to amphibian calls over around St. Charles. So,
Very fun.
Yeah, science is great.
Yeah, and I'll definitely say, you know, I'm here in this program, and I've previously worked field jobs that were more just data collection for big government databases and stuff like that. And I think this kind of data it's also just a really good excuse to like make yourself be in nature. Like the actual activity of field data collection isn't always that fun. But you have to be outside in order to do it, and it makes you spend so much time outside that you get to see all sorts of other things that you would have never been exposed to. And like for one of my jobs, which was field surveying for the Bureau of Land Management, we would be driving like 6 hours out in the middle of nowhere down some like terrible dirt road that like you'd never have a reason to go there if it wasn't part of the job, but because it's the job, you get to go to all these crazy places and see a lot of new stuff. So I encourage that as it's not even a hobby. It's just a job that makes you enjoy nature.
Yeah, I'd also add one that may be a little more surprising, a little more controversial in, I would say, our college biology program, though this is not the case for all programs, is hunting and fishing.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're doing it ethically, like make sure you've had a class, you're not wasting game or doing things that are making animals suffer or leaving garbage and all that horrible stuff. But yeah, because you have to get up very early and you have to be very quiet and you're sitting for long periods of time, whether that's on a lake or in a tree stand or whatever. And those connections, I think, are also very valid in terms of the American experience.
Mm-hmm. Anything that gets people to care about like the ecosystems around them I think that's a valid way of getting people connected. You know, hunting and fishing is that connection for a lot of people.
I mean, it is also ancestrally like what we came from.
Yeah.
Most of us had to, well, not our ancestors had to hunt and fish. Most of us this day do not have to do that because we can go to the grocery store and buy all of our things there. Mm-hmm. Which thankfully, because that saves a lot of time, but that's we are kind of removed from that step of getting our food.
Yeah, knowing where your food comes from is also just good. Like as a person, to think about that and be aware of the world. So encouraged.
So this is another question I have in my list of questions. So, from all of your experience with nature, how does it make you feel? Not to like make it sound like a therapy session, but when you're connecting with nature, what is that experience like for you? That's, again, a very broad question I'm asking.
Calm.
I'd say, for the most part, it's the reason I get up in the morning a lot of the times is to go out there and see the beauty of the natural world. And that's definitely one of my reasons for being, and one of the things that makes me happy. Like, every time I do it, every time I'm not out in nature for a certain amount of time, I just don't feel good. So I kind of require that to survive.
I mean, don't we all sort of require that? Isn't there like a mental health connection?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I'd say, though, it's to the point where I don't want to live in an urban area long term because I always feel ill at ease.
Very, very much the same here. Unless I can like sit and look at a field or like look at a forest, I'm never really happy with my view unless it's of trees or of plants or something like that.
I don't want to have to drive 2 hours to find a trail with no one else on it.
Yeah. Agreed.
Do you have a problem with running into other people while you're out experiencing nature?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, agreed.
So, like, how many people are we talking? Are we talking a couple hikers? Are we talking a lot of people? Like, what is, do you have like a threshold? Like, I saw one person, it's ruined.
A few people is fine. If I can be the only one there, even better. Just always.
Okay. Huh. I guess that doesn't bother me that much. I'm just like, oh, other people. Okay.
Yeah, I think once you've experienced being alone on a mountain with like all the nature around you, then it's, I don't know, it's a different feeling to be on like a crowded trail like in a city suburb.
Yeah, I don't want to hear other people. I don't want to hear evidence of humans
Okay.
except myself.
It's me like opening my snack bag while I'm on the trail. You don't want to hear that.
Unless we have like agreed we're going to hike together.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't want to hear
hey,
your
Becky.
stereo. I don't want to hear you. I don't want to hear your dog or your bike. I'm admittedly like a very selfish hiker. And I'm not out there like being mean to people. Of course they have a right to enjoy
Shaking
all
your
these
fist
places.
at them.
I'll say I'm not quite so bothered about like the other people, but the only thing I care about seeing is like new species of plants. And the closer you get to people, the worse the plants get in general, because we have a habit of messing with the environment and introducing weeds and stuff like that. So the farther you get away from humans, the better the plant species get in most cases. So
Yeah, I find that for wildlife too. And birding.
Yeah.
Though not always. Some of our best birding spots in St. Louis are in very metropolitan areas.
Okay.
True.
Yeah, you guys have brought up that interesting note about sort of solitude, because I guess when I think of like nature and like what do I feel when I'm out in nature, I don't know, like maybe the sense of like calm, like Becky was saying, but maybe also something on like a spiritual level, like I can't quite describe. I'm not saying I'm having like a religious experience when I'm out there, but I have heard like accounts of people saying like it is kind of a very unique, like otherworldly sounds very like possessed, but like
I'd say it's perfectly fine to say it as a spiritual experience. Everybody can get that from different things, and I'd say for me it's exposure to nature.
yeah, I think maybe not necessarily no one's around, but yeah, when it's very few people, I definitely can kind of what's the word I'm looking for? I understand what you're saying when you like want to be around less people. Like I think even I don't mind there being people there, but not having them, I guess I could connect more. So in that sense, I see what you're saying. So yes,
It's like, just imagine a beautiful untouched prairie, and there's just a Honda CRV in like the middle of the prairie, like
your Honda CRV?
yeah.
Sebastian walked there, Becky. What are you talking about?
It disrupts the vibe. Whatever like peaceful, idyllic thing you were just thinking about is now different because there's a CRV in the middle of the prairie, and that's unnatural.
So before moving to New Mexico, where Sebastian and I both moved from, like my home area is Idaho, and we're about 2 hours from Yellowstone. And this reminded me of that. there's a joke the locals play on people in Yellowstone National Park when we visit. We will stop and point at nothing just to see 5 cars stop and look for whatever it is and then drive away.
Oh,
Wow.
that is awesome. That is wonderful. That is how you get the whole trail to yourself, is you stop, take a few pictures, get everybody to stop and look for it, and then just keep running.
Maybe I'm a bit of a misanthrope.
Yeah, that sounds like
Yeah.
That sounds like the reverse thing I learned about in my sociology class, where like if someone stands on a street corner and looks up at something, even if there's nothing there, everyone will gather around you and also look up and stare at the nothing, thinking there's something there, but it's like the reverse of that almost.
Yep.
That's funny.
Fair.
So, just out of curiosity, as you guys have, we've lived a fair amount of life. What's the coolest or most beautiful thing you've gone out and experienced in nature, or connected with? It could be a place, an animal, anything.
I'll say there was this one particular moment where I was exploring the Lincoln Mountains in southern New Mexico, and these are just one little mountain range with some really cool plants, and I was actually looking for some old mines, and I was looking for silver ore, and just kind of roaming around and exploring these hills. And I was out there, I was camping at night, and I had no idea like what was around me, but I heard this sound in the forest, and it sounded like whales, like the high-pitched like calling of whales like echoing through the forest. And it was elk mating season, and the male elk were doing their bugling calls through the forest, and I don't know, and it sounded like it was coming from all directions, and yeah, felt like I was underwater in the ocean somewhere. And I was like, this is a really cool place to be, and I had no idea that I was going to experience that at that particular moment.
I have a lot, so I'll just give
Pick
you
your
one.
favorite or
Yes.
pick one.
I don't have a favorite.
We have lots of future episodes that we can talk about these sorts of
Okay,
things.
I'll tell y'all the one that I did the first when we did a trial run of this.
Oh, the practice episode. Oh, yeah.
So when I was 17, 18, I got a job. My mom said, you must get a job this summer. And my first job was with Trail Crew with the United States Forest Service. And they wanted us to inventory wilderness trails. So you're like out backpacking for 2 weeks at a time. And I was lagging behind everyone because I'd never done that before and didn't know anything about what I was doing. And this was kind of hardcore backpacking. Like we were like at least 20 miles away from civilization. So everyone's eating lunch at the end of a meadow, and I'm coming down mountain slope and see them. And I join them for lunch, and then we hear kind of a bark. And I had been seeing dog tracks and poop, and it just never occurred to me that who is walking their dog 20 miles from a trailhead?
In the middle of the wilderness.
Yeah, really big dogs, multiple tracks. And some of the other folks looked and spotted a gray wolf. And at that point, they had been reintroduced for only 10 years in the region. So I said, I've been reading about these, and if we howl, they might howl back. And we did, and they did. And I said, okay, the science book says that if we wait 20 minutes and do it again, they might do it again. And the wolves did it again. And that was the first time I got to hear wolves in the wild. And they were maybe, 75 yards away. They must have seen me while I was hiking, like lagging by myself. Clearly they had been in that area. But getting to hear something like that, especially from a reintroduction of a big predator that had been, killed off from that region, was really cool.
Awesome.
Nice. All right. The one that comes to my head is also from when I studied abroad, but it's not the one I told you guys about the practice show.
Oh, I like that one. But
It was,
okay,
it was a
give us
nice
the new one.
story. It's not really like a story, but it's just like we went to, in the southern coast of Australia, along the Great Ocean Road, there's this area called the 12 Apostles, which are just these massive, giant rock structures, and like this these big, like crystal clear waves are just like smashing into them. That for me, it's a very touristy spot, and of course you take a lot of pictures and stuff, so like this is why you guys were saying about, oh yes, you can't connect when there's people around. For me, it was just like the sheer awe of it, of like, this is so amazing, like like these land masses are giant and these waves could like kill you in an instant, but we're, sitting on like an observation balcony like hundreds of meters above the water. But I just thought it was so cool. Whenever I think back to Australia, I think about like that area, just like how impressive and powerful it is. And granted, a lot of Australia has deadly things in it, so that's not unusual for Australia, but I thought it was cool. I just think I'd think about that, like kind of thinking or going back to the fish article indirectly, like nature can be violent and powerful. And I think there's an instance of wanting to respect it, of what it can do and how dangerous it can be, but also how beautiful it can be at the same time. So that's kind of my immediate one. A lot of them are from study abroad because it's one of those things that sticks with you forever.
Once again, find something that forces you to be out in nature, and then you will experience wonderful things.
And there's no wrong way to do it. You don't need to be down in the dirt looking at plants and bugs. You can be a travel bug and
True.
see lots of awesome things, even without getting into the middle of nowhere. That's just as valid.
True.
So as we're approaching the end of the show, I want to talk about we've talked about how we've experienced nature, but what about people who maybe don't have the same amounts of income or access or opportunities? What are ways that they can experience nature? Like if you can't leave the city of St. Louis, like you're stuck in the concrete jungle, so to speak, like that would be a great group to know, like what could they possibly do? Or if you just don't have a lot of money and like you work a lot, like what are little ways we think that people can kind of go out and experience nature this summer, I guess immediately, but also just in a broader sense of thinking about connecting with nature. Because I work, at Walmart for 50 hours a week. Maybe I'm not going to go out to...
Not much backpacking.
Yeah. I mean, we do have good green spaces, and Forest Park is surprisingly diverse, especially in wildlife. I'd say the zoo and the botanical garden, totally valid. Botanical garden may be a little more expensive.
Zoo is free, so that's always a good option.
So all of those things are good. And if you look on social media, there are often free resources for, say, birding hikes or nature hikes and things like that. Social media is usually the place to find those things in my experience, but I am a very particular age group. So
I found that there's all sorts of little parks and little preserves kind of scattered around, not necessarily in the middle of town, but all around the edge of town. There's a ton of little, couple acres, couple square miles, little preserves where you can go for hikes and looking for stuff, and it's all free so long as you can get there or find some means to the trailhead. There's a lot of little places to find.
Yeah, my thought was going to be the parks. It just is like, I don't know if it's a hobby. I get out and walk a lot just as a regular thing, and one, just because it's nice to get outside, but also it's like, it gives me breaks from sitting all day, and when you're at a desk, it's not super great for your back, and also just it weighs down on you just in general sitting all day. So yeah, I like to get up and walk around. I walk around campus all the time, and it's really nice when it's like spring and summer and early fall. It's, you can't really do that as much during the winter when it's freezing cold and everything's dead, but I try to get out at least for a couple of minutes, even when it's cold. But yeah, I would recommend just going for walks. And if like there's a really cool green area, even if it's a really small patch of land, and you can like walk around and experience it, that's still something.
You can find plants and wildlife in essentially any place, so long as you go out and look for them.
All right. Any last thoughts on nature connecting with it?
I miss it. Want more of it.
Yes. Very excited for summer to begin.
Yes. Well, we are field biologists, so we will all be going out into the field very shortly.
Yes.
All right.
Calling.
Yes, calling. At least until PhD school's over. Not that I don't not want to do biology research afterwards. I don't know if the fervor or intensity of field season is something I want long term.
Never ends.
Never ends. All right, but that's going to wrap up our show this week. So as I mentioned at the top of the show, this is our last show for the semester. We will, of course, have shows during the summer. Those will be audio, not audio only. It's already an audio only show. Those will be pre-recorded shows that we'll upload to the Spotify, Amazon Music, and Google Podcasts sites. Follow us on Facebook at That Science and Nature Show in order to find out about our updates. And other than that, I think that's going to be it. It's been a fun spring semester. You'll hear us live again in the fall. The cast will probably be a little bit different because several of our castmates are graduating or moving or doing field research, as I'm glaring at Sebastian because I want him to come back for the show.
Guilty.
I want you to send us audio clips.
Yes, I will send you the clip of me being mauled by a jaguar.
But yes, the show will return in the fall in live format, but until then we'll have fun special summer shows that'll appear online. So until then, I'd like to thank Becky. I'd like to thank Sebastian. You've listened to That Science and Nature Show, and we're out.